Conklin and Company with 13 ABC Action News anchor Lee Conklin. First with what's happening behind the headlines. And Take 3, our panel of political analysts.
Morning, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Conklin and Company. Today on the program, there's so much to talk about. The return of Take 3, Skylar Meadows and Keith Burris from The Blade will join us. We're going to talk about, of course, the water crisis. Following that, also the election coming up in the fall, the governor's race, and much more, the auditor's race here in Lucas County. So we're looking forward to the return of Take 3. Been off for a couple of weeks because of the water crisis, but we've got it back today, an extended version for you on this Labor Day weekend. Speaking of which, we celebrate the American worker and a lot of American workers on the highways and byways of Northwest Ohio. And you see them each and every day if you're out traveling. And that leads us to our first guest who will say that's a good thing that we see so many of our American workers on the roads getting it done. A lot of construction. Teresa Pollack from the Ohio Department of Transportation. Good to see you again, Teresa. Thanks for coming in.
Good to see you too, Lee.
As always. And of course, our former colleague here at 13 ABC. It's been, in drivers' minds, perhaps an unprecedented summer of construction. Would I be off base in saying that?
It has been unprecedented. You know, we went through the winter with all of the snow, record-breaking snow, and now we are in a record-breaking construction season, unlike any, I think, many here in Northwest Ohio have ever seen on this scale. Let's
start on I-75 because it is a project that that's not being done overnight. Or actually, it is being done overnight, isn't it? There is work being done overnight, but it's a long process. And I think about Perrysburg to Bowling Green to Findlay, widening things. Where do we stand on that, and how far into the future are we going with that?
Well, we are right now in the process of working on the median. That means we're working in the middle and we're building that up. And as we do that, we're eventually going to see traffic move to southbound lanes. So both northbound and southbound will be on the same strip of pavement while we do work in the middle with drainage. And then towards next year, we're going to rip out the pavement on the northbound side. And then once we have the new pavement, we're going to switch it back over. So to do this type of work while we are under traffic, it does take some time. And that's why we need everybody's patience when they're going to be traveling in that roadway, especially just slow down. That's one of the biggest complaints that we get about it in that particular work zone. And eventually we'll see some ramp closures as you travel along that corridor well, and those will be coming up for next year. So there's going to be a lot more construction on the way. Still open to 2 lanes, and that's very important to point out. You can still move through the area. It is going to be slower, shifting going on, and you're going to notice changes, and that's why it's so important to pay attention to the roadway.
Where do you get the notification from workers, your staff out there? Hey, folks are going really fast, or they contact the state patrol? I mean, where does the word come that people are just not heeding? The construction zone speed limit might be 55, but people are going 60, 65, 68. I mean, who gives you that word?
It comes in from everywhere, but I think that what a lot of people don't know is the fact that we are watching these zones very, very carefully. In fact, we have staff that is just dedicated to going through these zones to seeing how they're set up. The engineers watch it very closely, and we're also working with the State Highway Patrol to make sure that we're catching speeders within those zones and keeping them up to date on the project, how construction is going, to make sure that they are well aware of it. And that has been a challenge just because we've got construction not only on that I-75 corridor in Wood County, but even through downtown Toledo as well.
Let's make our way north, Teresa, if we can. And you mentioned speed, but I think about drivers in the margin for error in a construction zone when you're going 55 to 60 and distractions and what have you. There's really not much room for error if you're a driver, very little.
No, and that's why it's very important for everybody to just pay attention. Put these down.
Put it down.
Put it down. Don't even look at it. If it beeps, just keep going, because that's another big complaint.
No, you don't have to get to it.
Yeah, and we have to keep everybody safe. So we're going to be traveling through there. Just remember to slow down and avoid distraction, because things are going to be changing not only this year, but through the winter, through next spring, and we've got an even more intense program coming up for next year, if you can believe it. Basically, the entire interstate system around Toledo is going to see some type of construction one way or the other.
475, you come off of 23, get on 475, take Perrysburg, you go through Salisbury Road, up to Airport Highway. and up to Central Avenue now, and then just about that whole stretch, Teresa Pollock, is filled with construction now.
Yes.
What's the process there? Right in the middle, expanding again, widening? I mean, is that the eventual end game here?
Yeah, we've put together the program right now. What we're seeing construction right now is all in planning and preparation for the widening of I-475. So we're looking down the road, so to speak, in order to prepare for that, because eventually that's coming. If you use that route to get home, say you live in Sylvania and you travel it for a commuter route, it gets very congested, even though not as congested as 75 with all of the traffic on that particular interstate. However, but that is a big commuter route, and we see a lot of congestion in that area. So to think about what we're doing all times of the day, essentially what we're doing is work on the interchange, improving safety on that interchange, and also looking at the bridges because they need widening. And when you're talking about widening, it's easier to just put the pavement down and clear out the middle of the roadway, similar to I-75. However, in the case of 475, we've got a series of 4 different bridges that will need to be widened in order to handle that capacity. They just need to be widened in order to have those 3 lanes. So right now we're doing the bridge work, and then eventually we'll be able to do the main line of I-475. And it's important to know that a lot of the bridges on 475 were in rough shape. I don't know if you remember a couple of years back, we had issues with a lot of potholes on those roadways, and even this past winter, we'd be out there constantly repairing them. Well, that's not the case anymore. We're doing something about it, not only to promote safety now, but to also promote what's going to happen in the future with the widening and thinking ahead.
What's the deal with all the roundabouts?
The roundabouts?
What's the deal with the roundabouts now? It's kind of become the rage now. And how much is ODOT involved in this process?
It's a lot of the, I guess, transportation rage, if you will. Federal Highways has done extensive studies on just how much they improve safety and how they keep traffic flowing. And that's very important to think about. And you might think, oh, this is confusing, I can't handle it. But if you look at the way it's set up, all you have to do when you come to a roundabout is yield and then go through if there's not another car. So you're going at a slower rate of speed, but you don't have to come to a complete stop. And what a lot of people don't remember is there's much more conflict points at an intersection. You're turning right, you're turning left, and who knows who's turning when. And that's where you get into the accidents, and you can get into even more severe accidents, say like T-bones from the left. Whereas if you're entering in a roundabout, the rear end, side swipe, those are not as dangerous. So you really have to think in terms of safety on that broader scale. Federal Highway promotes them. We have one on State Route 18. We're going to be building one on McCord Road. There's a lot of them done through the Lucas County Engineers Office. The City of Toledo, I know, is going to be installing them. So they're right now in Northwest Ohio, Michigan, a lot on state DOTs are using them as well.
A couple on Dutch Road within 200 yards of each other. I mean, one in front of a daycare center, another by a church, but very close in proximity to each other. Are you involved in that, or is that a county issue? That's mainly what the county has done with their design, and again, they're looking at it from a safety and keeping people moving. I do believe that there's a fatality somewhere within that span, and so they're looking at it as, hey, how can we improve the safety and keep things moving? Because you were coming to stops, and then you'd have to stop again. So with this, you're at least slowing down and then being able to move through those intersections, and otherwise, it's a good safety. Safety. Also, you look at in terms of efficiency as well and being able to get around it too. Okay, so that's a couple of issues to bring up for the summertime. Looking into the future, we know what the winter was all about, Teresa Pollock. We understand that. We've done stories with Northwood, Lake Township, about the price of salt going up 400%. It's amazing. Those jurisdictions have said, hey, we got to hold off. We can't buy it. What about the Ohio Department of Transportation? I know you have some because I see it at your salt dome over there in Maumee from time to time. You got a big pile of it, but where do you stand for the winter of 2015? The salt issue is complex. Since the end of last winter, we ran into the problem where the supply, they just couldn't handle the amount that was needed all across, not only here in Northwest Ohio, but across the whole entire Midwest. So what has happened is the rough winter obviously drove up the cost. What ODOT did is that in anticipation of that, we looked and said, hey, we need to fill our salt sheds. We did a summer fill up. And so that's what we decided to do. And we opened it up to those communities if they wanted to join or if they wanted to purchase their own salt. We just want to give them options because we're more or less like a Sam's Club. We can buy in bulk. And if you want to buy with us, give us your quantities and we'll be able to see. Of course, they'd be obviously paying for it, but then we kind of
That's more or less how it's set up. And now we're looking at the winter buy and what's ahead for the winter, and that's where you're seeing those prices really skyrocket. So you really have to look at the demand of last year and what's going to happen this year. I mean, will we see the type of winter we saw last year? Some say yes, some say no.
Well, if history says anything, we won't, right? Once, I mean, it was a record-setting winter, right?
You know, Lee, we know it's going to be cold. We know it's going to snow. And we know ODOT is going to be ready to handle whatever Mother Nature throws at us. And we've been looking into different options, especially with the brine. I know that we've talked about it in the past, but we're also looking and seeing what kind of different chemicals we could use, such as the beet juice, and I think we're going to be experimenting with another one. We use direct liquid application, so brine used during the storm, and that worked very efficiently. We're also looking at what we can do with all of this construction, because we're going to have to treat it differently. How is that going to play out? So we've got a lot of different circumstances for this year, but then we're also looking into options such as more snow fencing, that type of thing. So there's a lot to work on, and we'll be ready.
Yeah, and we'll see you out there. You'll have your winter gear. I know you will.
Yeah.
You know, the meteorologist that you are and have been. So we'll look forward to it. A lot of nighttime work going on too. And certainly during the day. So there's a lot to think about. If you're out on the road, construction workers are everywhere. So I don't know if you have a slogan for that, but just slow down, and you know, it doesn't come into the flooding situation. That's another slogan, but you want everyone to slow down, right?
Just slow down, take your time, avoid the phone. And I think even though we know that there's a lot of impatient drivers, and with all this construction, you got to remember that it's a great investment here for Northwest Ohio, and we're putting a lot of people back to work. It's just something that's great that we see this, you know, here in Northwest Ohio versus Columbus, Cincinnati. It's just nice to have it here right in our backyard.
On this Labor Day weekend, it's great to have you. Truce Pollock, thank you.
No problem, Lee.
Come back in just a minute. Conklin and Company continues right after this.